To introduce our study, we focused on the submission rates to the IRBs, or institutional review boards, of studies using the behavioral risk factor surveillance system, um, or data from the behavioral risk factor surveillance system. And the behavioral risk factor surveillance system is the nation's premier system of health-related telephone surveys that collect state data about US residents regarding their health-related risk behaviors, chronic health conditions, and use of preventive services. Um, Essentially, this data, it's a well-known fact that all the answers are de-identified and there's no way of linking the answers to specific individuals. And this data does not require or does not qualify as human subjects research, and therefore does not need to be submitted to an IRB. Yet you'll see in our research that despite this well-known fact, um, many of the studies involved in our research still submitted to an IRB, even though they didn't need to. And so this first table just breaks down our data. We had 154 random results generated from studies using the behavioral risk factor surveillance system data starting in 2011 up until December of 2020. And of those 154 studies, we found that 34 of them sought after IRB approval. To break it down a little bit more, 2 of those 34 studies were required by their journal to seek IRB approval. But as you can see, there's still a large percentage of those 154 studies that are submitting for IRB approval despite not needing to. This next table breaks down our statistics a little bit more. It breaks it down by year, which ones are by year, whether or not they were submitted to an IRB or whether it wasn't mentioned, whether the study was conducted in the United States or not, and whether they received funding. And this table right here was a little too big to include into our poster, but I wanted to highlight it because it is going to be in our manuscript, where it just breaks down all the studies, the journals associated with the studies that published them, as well as the institutions, and whether or not the journal or the institution required IRB approval in order to publish. And as I said beforehand, only 2 journals required it, and none of the institutions required it. So that brings us to our main takeaway and hopes for future research. The big question is to seek IRB approval or not to seek IRB approval. Is IRB approval unnecessary red tape that prevents beneficial, relevant statistical findings from being made known publicly? Is it an unnecessary obstacle that hinders research? Or should all research be submitted to an IRB? Should all 154 of the studies included in our research have been submitted to an IRB? We do know the benefits of an IRB, where it protects not only those a part of the research itself, but those conducting the research. And so we've yet to decide the direction we want to take our research, but these are the 2 leading questions that we hope we can find beneficial and insightful answers to as we continue to study this topic. So that concludes our study, and thanks for letting us be a part of OSU Research Day.